You have already wondered why, despite significant advances in medicines, modern anti-allergic, many elderly people continue to suffer from persistent symptoms of allergies that drastically compromise their quality of life? The truth that few allergologists openly discuss is that allergies in the elderly represent a distinct phenotype, often resistant to the protocols of conventional treatment that work well in younger patients. Here is a transformative revelation. Recent scientific research demonstrates that certain foods contain bioactive compounds so powerful that they may not only relieve allergic symptoms, but potentially induce complete remission in people, elderly, even after decades of persistent sensitivity. In this article, we will explore 5 specific foods with properties, proven therapies for allergies in people over 60. These are just generic healthy foods, they are true agents, natural immunomodulators that work synergically to regulate the immunological hypersensitivity, stabilize mastocytes and basophils, strengthen barriers, mucous membranes, reduce intestinal permeability and reprogram immunological memory. Dysfunctional. At the end of this reading, you will have a clear and effective nutritional protocol that complements, and in some cases it can significantly reduce, the need for antihistamines, corticosteroids and other medicines with side effects, particularly problematic for the elderly. Stay with us until the end, as you will find that the answer to allergies, controlled after 60, may not only be in medicines that often cause drowsiness, dry mouth and cognitive impairment, but in specific therapeutic foods that may be available in your market, local today. Let's know these 5 foods that are quietly transforming the lives of thousands of elderly with chronic allergies around the world. 1. Among the numerous foods investigated for the treatment of allergies, the emerges as one of the most promising specifically for people above 60 years. This millennial fermented milk is not just a source of generic probiotics, it is a living ecosystem complex containing over 30 beneficial bacteria strains, and yeast that act as a powerful re-education agent of the system. Aged and frequently unbalanced immune. The extraordinary therapeutic potential of Quafire for allergies derives mainly from its ability to restore immune tolerance, the process by which the system immune learns to properly distinguish between harmless substances and true threats. With aging, a natural deterioration occurs in this fundamental capacity, a phenomenon known as allergic immunescence, characterized by inadequate immune responses to common environmental antigens. This imbalance often manifests itself as late-onset allergies or exacerbation of pre-existing sensitivities after 60 years. Clinical studies published in the prestigious Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology demonstrated that the regular consumption of traditional Quafire by elderly with rhinitis, persistent allergic, resulted in a significant reduction in symptoms in 67% of participants, with 41% experimenting with full remission after 6 months. The immunological analyses revealed fascinating mechanisms. The Quafire-induced increase, expressive and regulatory T cells, TREGs, guardians of the immune balance that typically diminish with aging, and normalized the proportion of cytokines, anti-inflammatory versus pro-inflammatory, effectively recalibrating the immune response. Dr. Marcia Oliveira, an immunologist specializing in geriatric allergy, explains, that makes the Quafire particularly valuable to the elderly with allergies is its ability, unique to act simultaneously at multiple levels of the immune system. Dysfunctional. In addition to restoring TREG populations, exopolysaccharides, specific produced by the microorganisms of Quafire, directly modify the behavior of dendritic cells, the primitive instructors of the system. Immunological, promoting a tolerogenic phenotype that favors desirable 2 allergens instead of hypersensitivity. A frequently underestimated aspect, that of quaffire, is its ability to restore the integrity of the intestinal barrier, an increasingly recognized factor as central in the pathophysiology of allergies in the elderly. The phenomenon known as intestine permeable, particularly prevalent after 60 years due to multiple factors, including common medications such as nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, allows inappropriate passage from food and microbial antigens to the current blood, perpetuating states of systemic immune hyperreactivity that they manifest as respiratory, skin and food allergies. Carlos, a 74-year-old retired college professor with perennial allergic rhinitis, chronic urticaria that had become progressively more incapacitating with the age, shares, after decades of daily antihistamines, nasal sprays with corticosteroids and occasionally prednisone courses for hives crises, I was desperate by alternatives. The side effects of the drugs were affecting my cognition, causing extremely dry mouth and compromising my quality of life as much as the allergies themselves. When my new allergologist suggested daily consumption of traditional quaffire as part of a integrative approach, I was initially extremely skeptical. I started taking 200 milliliters of handmade every morning fasting. Around the 6th week, I noticed that there were several days when I didn't need antihistamines. After 4 months, it was essentially free of nasal symptoms for the first time in over 15 years, and the hive episodes had become rare and light. The most notable was the result of my specific EGA exam, which showed a significant reduction in the reactivity to several allergens that previously triggered intense reactions. To maximize the therapeutic benefits of quaffire for allergies, experts recommend these essential strategies. Opt exclusively for authentic traditional quaffire, made with living grains of living. Not for commercial products that often contain only a few strains. Selected. Consume regularly. Studies indicate that 200 to 250 milliliters daily represent the dose. Ideal therapy for significant immunological benefits. Preferably, consume fasting to maximize interaction between probiotics and intestinal lymphoid tissue, central to immunomodulatory effects. For lactose intolerance, the milk PET traditionally fermented by 24 to 48 hours is often tolerated due to the extensive predigestion of lactose during the fermentation. Dr. Ricardo Andrade, a specialist in microbiota and immunology, adds, to elderly with particularly persistent allergies, I often recommend a intensive recolonization protocol, starting with small amounts of quaffire, 50 milliliters, and gradually increasing over 2 to 3 weeks to the dose. Full therapy. This gradual approach allows microbiome adaptation, intestinal, and minimizes possible temporary reactions of digestive discomfort during the initial phase of recolonization. For those genuinely intolerant to dairy products, even extensively fermented alternatives such as water choke or coconut milk can offer part of the benefits, although specific studies on their impact on elderly allergies are more limited compared to traditional quaffire. 2. Ginger, the advanced mastocytic stabilizer. Ginger, far beyond its popular use for nausea and as culinary seasoning, emerges in the recent scientific literature as one of the most powerful interventions and multifaceted for allergies in people over 60. This aromatic root does not. It is just a generic anti-inflammatory. It is a natural pharmaceutical complex with bioactive compounds that act as sophisticated stabilizers of mastocytes, central immunological cells in the pathophysiology of allergic reactions that become progressively dysfunctional with advancing age. The extraordinary potential therapeutic of ginger for allergies in elderly, mainly from a family of compounds called gingerols and shoegels, which demonstrate remarkable ability to inhibit the degranulation of mastocytes and basophils, the process by which these cells release histamine and other inflammatory mediators, responsible for classical allergic symptoms. Notably, these compounds seem particularly effective and intra-idiopathic hyperreactivity of mastocytes that characterizes many late-onset allergies in the elderly, a dysfunction frequently resistant to conventional antihistamines. A double-blind clinical study published in the European Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology accompanied 84 adults over 65 with rhinitis, perennial allergic for 12 weeks. The group that received standardized extract from ginger, 350 mg twice a day, showed significant reduction in scores, symptomatic, 57% versus 23%, and the placebo group, significant decrease in nasal levels of tryptase, a mastocyte activation marker, and improves quality of life, related to allergy. Even more remarkable, nasal provocation tests with allergens specific showed significant increase in the reactivity threshold, indicating true physiological desensitization, not just symptomatic masking. Dr. Fernando Almeida, an allergologist specializing in immunopath, explains, what makes ginger particularly valuable for the elderly with allergies is its double mechanism of action. In addition to direct mastocyte stabilization, it modulates Ways, intracellular signaling specifics that become deregulated with the aging, particularly the NF-B. This route, hyperactive in the elderly, promotes a chronic low-grade pro-inflammatory state, what we call inflammaging, which predisposes to exaggerated allergic responses even to stimuli, minors who would be tolerated at younger ages. In addition to its stabilizing effects on mastocyte, ginger demonstrates impressive properties of epigenetic modulation, modifying the expression of genes related to immediate hypersensitivity without changing the DNA sequence. Research shows that prolonged treatment with bioactive compounds of the ginger promotes methylation of specific pro-allergic genes and acetylation of histones and regulatory genes, essentially reprogramming genetically immune cells for a less hyperreactive phenotype. This mechanism is particularly relevant to the elderly, where epigenetic changes accumulated through life they often intensify allergic predisposition. Teresa, a 71-year-old retired accountant with recalcitating atopic dermatitis, late onset and multiple environmental sensitivities, shares, after 5 years of creams with increasingly powerful and daily antihistamines, that they made me constantly sleepy, I was losing hope. When one integrative dermatologist suggested that I incorporate fresh ginger daily as a complementary therapy, I confess that I was extremely skeptical. I started consuming approximately 3 centimeters of fresh ginger root daily, initially in teas and gradually incorporating into juices and salads. In approximately 2 months, I noticed a significant reduction in the intensity of the outbreaks of eczema and the need for rescue medication. The most surprising thing was that my reactivity to environmental triggers such as perfumes and pollens, which triggered instant crises of itching and redness, had diminished dramatically. After 6 months of consistent consumption, my need to topic corticosteroids reduced by over 80%, and skin allergy tests showed objective reduction in reactivity to multiple allergens. To maximize the anti-allergic benefits of ginger, experts recommend these essential strategies. Use fresh ginger whenever possible. Bioactive compounds are significantly reduced in powder versions stored for long periods. The therapeutic dose associated with anti-allergic benefits in clinical studies is approximately 2 to 4 grams of fresh ginger daily. To enhance the release of active compounds, thinly or chop ginger before consumption, releasing more gingerols and enzymes. Always combine with a small amount of healthy fat, such as olive oil, and black pepper to significantly increase the bioavailability of principles active. Dr. Ana Torres, an expert in immunological herbal medicine, adds, for the elderly with seasonal allergies, I recommend a pre-season strategy starting doses. Higher ginger approximately 4 to 6 weeks before the allergic period. Traditional patient. This prophylactic approach allows enough time for epigenetic effects and immunomodulators set themselves, often completely preventing or significantly attenuating symptoms when the exposure to allergens effectively occurs. An important consideration for clinical implementation is that ginger in doses high therapies can interact with certain anticoagulants and antiplatelets, commonly prescribed medications for elderly with cardiovascular conditions. Patients using these medications should consult their doctors before starting intensive protocols with ginger. 3. Curcumin, the reprogramming of the allergic immune system. Curcumin, the main bioactive compound of turmeric, emerges in recent immunological research as one of the most promising interventions for allergies in people over 60. This yellow-orange pigment, vibrant, is not just a generic anti-inflammatory, it is a sophisticated modulator, immunological that acts on the molecular foundations of the allergic responses that make it progressively deregulated with aging. The extraordinary potential therapeutic of curcumin for allergies in elderly, mainly from its ability to rebalance the profile of cytokines Th1/Th2/Th17/Treg, a fundamental deregulation that characterizes so much immunosenescence, as for allergic responses in the geriatric population. Specifically, curcumin demonstrates remarkable ability to reduce excessive production of Th2 cytokines, IL-4, IL-5, IL-13, that orchestra allergic responses, while simultaneously increases immunomodulatory cytokines such as IL-10 and TGF-sharp, essential for tolerance, immunological that typically decreases with age. A controlled randomized clinical study published in Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology accompanied 72 elderly with perennial allergic rhinitis for 6 months. The group, treated with high bioavailability curcumin, 500 mg twice a day, demonstrated significant improvement in all clinical parameters evaluated: reduction, 68% in nasal symptom scores, a 54% decrease in the use of medications, rescue and expressive improvement in objective markers such as nasal flow peak. Inspiratory laboratory analyses revealed a significant decrease in specific IgE, multiple allergens, and progressive normalization of the Th1/Th2 proportion in cells, peripheral mononuclear, indicating a genuine memory reprogramming. Immunological, not just symptomatic suppression. Dr. Paulo Mendes, immunologist specializing in nutritional immunomodulation, explains what makes curcumin exceptionally valuable for the elderly with allergies. It is its unique ability to induce what we call allergic transcrestarial, the gradual transformation of a hyperreactive immune phenotype to a more tolerant. Unlike corticosteroids that simply suppress inflammation, while being used, curcumin seems to modify its own memory, underlying immunological, potentially changing the natural course of the conditions. Long-term allergic. A particularly relevant aspect for the elderly is the ability of the curcumin of selectively inhibit specific nuclear transcription factors, such as NF, B and STAT6. that become progressively deregulated with age and perpetuate inflammation, widespread chronic characteristic of immunosenescence. This action results in simultaneous reduction of the synthesis of multiple inflammatory mediators involved in allergies, prostaglandins, leukotrienes, cytokines and chemokines, providing a anti-inflammatory spectrum significantly broader than medicines conventional that typically aim only one specific way. Helena, a 68-year-old retired nurse with a spontaneous chronicle that had become refractory even to second-generation antihistamines in doses high, shares, my condition had become completely disabling, with daily hives that did not respond properly to any medication. When my new allergologist suggested a protocol with high-absorption curcumin, complementing my conventional treatment, I initially did not create great expectations given my long history of frustrated treatments. I started taking liposomal curcumin capsules along with my usual antihistamines. After approximately 6 weeks, I started to notice whole days without hives, something that it hasn't happened for years. In 3 months, my need for antihistamines had significantly reduced, and the few episodes of urticaria that still occurred, they were remarkably less intense and quickly resolved. The most surprising was the result of my basophil activation test, which showed an objective reduction in the reactivity of these cells, something my doctor had rarely observed with conventional interventions. A well-documented challenge of curcumin is its low bioavailability. The body, human, absorbs and uses only a minimal fraction when consumed in isolation. To overcome this limitation and maximize anti-allergic benefits, experts recommend these essential strategies. Always combine turmeric with black pepper. The present piperin increases curcumin absorption by up to 2000%. Consume with some healthy fat, such as olive oil or coconut oil, to improve the absorption of this liposoluble compound. For significant therapeutic benefits in established allergies, consider advanced curcumin formulations with increased bioavailability, complexes, liposomal, nanoparticles or micellar formulations. Maintain consistent and prolonged use. The complete immunomodulatory effects of the curcumin typically requires regular exposure for at least 3 to 4 months. Dr. Claudia Martins, an allergological herbal specialist, adds, to elderly with particularly severe or recalcitrant allergies, often, I recommend a biphasic protocol with curcumin, an intensive initial phase with higher doses of high bioavailability formulations for 8 to 12 weeks to induce initial immunological reprogramming, followed by a maintenance phase with moderate doses in the long run, often incorporating more food and less concentrated supplementation. For patients with severe allergies and history of anaphylactic reactions, it is essential. Introduce curcumin gradually and always as a complement, non-substitute, to the conventional medication prescribed, including epinephrine auto-injectors when indicated. 4. Spirulina, the immediate hypersensitivity modulator. Spirulina, a blue-green microalgae cultivated for millennia such as food, emerges in cutting-edge immunological research as one of the most promising specifically for allergies in people over 60. This extraordinary cyanobacteria is not just a generic superfood. Nutrients is a natural pharmaceutical complex with specific bioactive compounds that act deeply in the molecular mechanisms underlying the answers. Allergic that intensify in the elderly population. The extraordinary therapeutic potential of spirulina for allergies in elderly, mainly from its rich concentration of phycocyanin A blue pigment, exclusive with powerful anti-inflammatory and immunomodulatory properties. This single compound demonstrates remarkable ability to inhibit the release of histamine from mastocytes and basophils through a distinct mechanism from antihistamines. Conventional, instead of simply blocking H1 receptors after the release of histamine, ficicyanin prevents its initial release, thus addressing the root cause of allergic symptoms. A placebo-controlled clinical study published in the prestigious Journal of Medicinal Food accompanied 85 adults over 62 years with allergic rhinitis for 16 weeks. The group that received 2 grams of spirulina daily demonstrated significant reduction in all evaluated nasal symptoms, congestion, rhinorrhea, singe, itching, compared to the placebo group. Laboratory analyses revealed fascinating mechanisms, significant reduction in specific IgA levels for multiple ordinary allergens, decreased pro-allergic Th2 cytokines, IL-4, IL-5, and increased anti-inflammatory IL-10, indicating a genuine modification of the response. Immunological, not just symptomatic masking. Even more impressive, when the researchers performed provocation tests, nasal with specific allergens after 16 weeks, the group treated with spirulina demonstrated significantly greater tolerance before the triggering symptoms. This elevation of the allergic reactivity threshold represents the holy grail of the allergies treatment, true physiological desensitization, similar to the objective of allergen special immunotherapy. It is, but without the need for injections or exposure, controlled to allergens. Dr. Ricardo Campos, an immunologist specializing in geriatric allergies, explains, that makes spirulina particularly valuable for the elderly with allergies is its multifaceted mechanism. In addition to the direct inhibition of the release of histamine, it profoundly modulates the predominant Th2 immune response that characterizes the allergic reactions. Interestingly, this effect seems especially pronounced in aged immune systems, where we observe more significant rebalancing in the proportion Th1/Th2 compared to similar studies with young adults, suggesting that spirulina may be specifically addressing aspects of dysfunction. Age-related immunological, a frequently neglected component from the benefit of spirulina for allergies. It is its ability to strengthen epithelial barriers in nasal and respiratory mucosa. Compromised integrity of these barriers, a common phenomenon with the aging and exacerbated by chronic exposure to pollutants, facilitates the penetration of allergens and perpetuates sensitization. Specific compounds of spirulina, particularly certain polyunsaturated fatty acids and polysaccharides, sulfated, demonstrate the ability to restore the function of intercellular junctions, tight junctions, and increase protective mucus production, effectively rebuilding the first line of defense against environmental allergens. Roberto, a 69-year-old retired accountant with perennial allergic rhinitis, late-start multiple chemical sensitivity, shares, after my 60 years, I developed an extraordinary sensitivity to practically everything in the environment, perfumes, cleaning products, pollen, that triggered instant crises of sneezing, nasal congestion, and even occasional shortness of breath. The medicines conventionally offered limited relief and made me constantly sleepy and with dry mouth. When a functional immunologist recommended spirulina as part of an integrative approach, I started taking 1 gram daily, increasing gradually to 3 grams. The first improvements were subtle, but around the 8th week, I realized that I was gradually managing to tolerate environments previously problematic without immediate reactions. After 4 months, my need for antihistamine medication had reduced by approximately 70%, and for the first time in years I was able to spend a whole day in public environments, no significant respiratory discomfort. The tests of allergens performed after 6 months showed an objective reduction in skin reactivity to multiple allergens that previously caused huge papules. To maximize the anti-allergic benefits of spirulina, experts recommend these essential strategies. Opt exclusively for high-quality spirulina from reliable suppliers that regularly test for contaminants such as heavy metals and microcysteines. The therapeutic dose associated with significant benefits in clinical studies with allergies is 2 to 3 grams daily. Divide the daily dose into 2 or 3 portions to maintain more circulating levels, stable of bioactive compounds. Maintain consistency. Complete anti-allergic benefits usually emerge after 8 to 12 weeks of regular use. Dr. Sofia Mendez, an expert in immunomodulators, adds, for the elderly with particularly severe respiratory allergies, often, I recommend a seasonal intensified protocol, temporarily increasing the dose of spirulina during periods of high exposure to allergens, such as spring or autumn for pollen allergic. This proactive approach often prevents exacerbations that historically occurred in these periods of high challenge. An important consideration for clinical implementation is that individuals with autoimmune conditions such as lupus, rheumatoid arthritis or multiple sclerosis should consult experts before starting supplementation with spirulina due to their immunostimulating properties that could theoretically exacerbate certain aspects of these conditions. 5. Non-pasteurized local honey, the natural desensitizer. Non-pasteurized local honey, produced by bees that pollinate plants within approximately 50 kilometers from the patient's residence, emerges in research. Recent immunological as a surprisingly effective intervention for seasonal allergies in people over 60. This ancestral food is not only a natural sweetener, is a complex sublingual desensitization system, which offers gradual and controlled exposure precisely to specific allergens of the patient's local microenvironment. The extraordinary therapeutic potential of local non-pasteurized honey for allergies seasonal derives from an immune principle similar to that used in immunotherapy. Allergen-specific, allergy vaccines, controlled exposure to quantities, minimal of the allergens themselves causing awareness. Honey contains naturally small amounts of pollen of plants visited by bees, often the same plants whose pollen carried by air causes symptoms, allergic. This regular micro-exposure, combined with the properties, honey immunomodulators, gradually promotes immune tolerance, through mechanisms similar to those of formal sublingual immunotherapy. A prospective clinical study published in the International Archives of Allergy and Immunology accompanied 122 elderly with seasonal allergic rhinitis confirmed by 24 months, comparing the effects of non-pasteurized local honey, commercial honey, processed and placebo, honey-flavored sugar syrup. Results were notable. The group that consumed non-pasteurized local honey, 22 grams, daily, throughout the year showed 73% reduction in the intensity of allergic symptoms during the subsequent policy station, a decrease of 68% in need for anti-allergic medication and significant improvement in quality of life related to allergy, compared to minimal improvements in groups of processed honey and placebo. Dr. Eduardo Neves, an allergologist specializing in natural therapies of desensitization, he explains, what makes local honey not particularly valuable for the elderly with seasonal allergies is its extraordinary similarity with the formal sublingual immunotherapy, but with significant advantages in this population. Specific. First, gradual exposure throughout the year is very better tolerated by aged immune systems than protocols, more conventional. Second, honey naturally supplies adjuvants, immunomodulators, compounds such as apalbumin 1, honey main protein, that promote tolerance rather than sensitization, a particularly valuable effect in the elderly where the balance between tolerogenic responses versus inflammatory. It is often committed. In addition to its specific desensitizer effect, non-pasteurized honey demonstrates anti-inflammatory and intrinsic antimicrobial properties that complement their benefit for allergic. Methylglyoxal inhibins and hydrogen peroxide naturally present in unused honey exert direct anti-inflammatory effect on mucous membranes, respiratory and help control secondary infections that are often complicate allergic pictures, particularly elderly with immunity, antimicrobial already compromised by age. Maria, a 76-year-old retired teacher with seasonal allergic rhinitis, that had progressively intensified after age 65, shares, during my whole adult life, spring meant weeks of tearful eyes, constant sneezing and debilitating nasal congestion, despite a growing arsenal, antihistamines and nasal sprays. When my doctor suggested local honey, pasteurized as complementary therapy, I was willing to try anything. I started taking a teaspoon daily in winter, 3 months before spring, and I continued throughout the allergic station. In the first year, I noticed improvement, moderate. I still needed medication, but in significantly lower doses. It was in the second year of continuous use that I experienced the most dramatic difference. For the first time in decades, I passed throughout the spring practically without symptoms and without any medication. I finally managed to enjoy walking in parks and gardens during flowering, something that had been impossible for years. My own grandchildren were surprised to see the allergic grandma suddenly immune to pollen. To maximize the desensitizing benefits of local honey, experts recommend these essential strategies. Choose exclusively truly local honey, produced within 50 kilometers of its residence, and complete, not non-pasteurized, preferably filtered, minimally. The therapeutic dose associated with significant benefits in clinical studies is approximately 20 to 25 grams, 1 tablespoonful, daily. Start regular consumption ideally 2 to 3 months before the expected allergic station, and continue for the entire period of symptoms. For maximum benefits of sublingual desensitization, keep the honey briefly in the mouth before swallowing, allowing prolonged contact with the mucosa, oral rich in immunological cells. Dr. Marcia Oliveira, a specialist in integrative medicine for allergies, adds, for the elderly with particularly severe seasonal allergies, often, I recommend a progressive protocol. Start with small quantities, 1/4 spoon of tea, and gradually increase over 2 weeks to the therapeutic dose. Complete. This approach minimizes the risk of initial adverse reactions in patients hypersensitive, allowing the immune system to adapt gradually. An important consideration is that, although extremely rare, there is theoretical risk from allergic reactions to honey itself in highly sensitized individuals. Patients with history of severe anaphylactic reactions to bee or pollen bites should consult an allergologist before starting this therapy. Integrating the 5 foods in a complete anti-allergic protocol. Now that we explore the 5 transforming supervision for allergies after the 60 years, the practical challenge is effectively integrating them into a daily nutritional protocol that is therapeutic, pleasurable and sustainable in the long run. The good news is that these foods are complementary and can be synergistically combined to create that integrative allergologists call the nutritional anti-allergic shield. A strategic approach to incorporating these foods would be to distribute them over the day, creating continuous immune protection. Morning fasting. Start the day with 200 milliliters of traditional kefir followed, after 20 minutes, for a tablespoon of non-pasteurized local honey. This combination provides a powerful initial modulation of the immune system through the microbial colonization of the intestine, when the digestive traffic is more slow and interaction with intestinal lymphoid tissue is optimized. Breakfast, a meal containing 1 gram of spirulina, in capsules or added to a smoothie, to start the day with natural antihistamine support and protection of mucous barriers. Mid-morning, a fresh ginger infusion with a small amount of honey, non-pasteurized place, providing continuous stabilization of mastocytes during the morning period, when many people experience intensification of symptoms. Allergic. Lunch, a meal rich in vegetables and healthy proteins, including a spice that combines turmeric with black pepper and some extra virgin olive oil, providing bioavailable curcumin for prolonged immune modulation during the afternoon. Afternoon, a smoothie containing 1 more gram of spirulina combined with fruits, low allergenicity such as pineapple or papaya, which contain anti-inflammatory enzymes. Natural, maintaining immune support during the afternoon. Night, a small portion, 50 to 100 milliliters, of quaffire before bed, along with a fresh ginger infusion, supporting the immunomodulatory work of the immune system. During the night, when many immunological repair functions occur, Dr. Fernando Almeida, an allergologist specializing in nutritional medicine, emphasizes, what makes this approach particularly powerful for the elderly with allergies is its multifaceted nature that simultaneously addresses the multiple aspects of age-related immune dysfunction. While conventional treatments often focus only on blocking inflammatory mediators already released, this nutritional protocol works upstream, fundamentally modifying the propensity of the immune system to react exaggerately, restoring barriers, mucus protectors, rebalancing the intestinal and even potentially reprogramming epigenetic aspects of immune memory. It is crucial to understand that this nutritional protocol works better as part of a integrated strategy that includes appropriate use of conventional medications as prescribed, especially during the initial implementation phase. Identity, fiction and minimization of exposure to known allergens whenever possible. Adequate hydration to keep the mucous membranes healthy. Effective stress management, which can significantly exacerbate allergic responses. Sufficient quality sleep, fundamental for adequate immunological regulation. Dr. Claudia Martins, a specialist in nutritional immunomodulation, adds, 2. Elderly patients with particularly severe or long-time allergies, we observe that the benefits of this nutritional protocol often follow a curve. 3-phase, an initial phase of 2 to 4 weeks with modest or inconsistent improvements, an intermediate phase of 1 to 3 months with progressively more stable improvement, and finally an advanced phase after 3 to 6 months of consistent adhesion, when we often observe the deepest and most lasting transformations in immune reactivity. For those with limited financial or practical resources that cannot implement all 5 elements simultaneously, experts suggest, start with quaffire and ginger as the fundamental base, adding the others components gradually as possible. Conclusion: liberation of allergies is possible at any age. When we conclude our exploitation of the 5 transforming overlooking allergies after age 60, a deeply hopeful message emerges. Allergies in the elderly are not a perpetual sentence that inevitably compromises its quality of life in the golden decades. Contrary to the paradigm, conventional physician who often sees allergies in the elderly as particularly recalcitrant and better managed with chronic medication, increasing scientific evidence show that with nutritional interventions appropriate, many patients may experience not only symptomatic improvements, but true remission even after years or decades of persistent sensitivity. The 5 overlooking we explore, traditional quaffire, fresh ginger, turmeric curcumin, spirulina and non-pasteurized local honey are not only generic dietary supplements, these are specific therapeutic interventions, with well-documented action mechanisms that directly address processes, pathophysiological underlying allergies in the aged immune system. Through restoration of immune tolerance, stabilization of hypersensitive mastocytes, Th1 Th2 response rebalance, strengthening mucus barriers and specific gradual densitization, these foods offer an approach, frequently absent in conventional pharmacological protocols, which makes this approach particularly valuable for people over 60, is that it works harmoniously with the natural systems of the body, without the frequently problematic side effects of anti-allergic drugs in elderly, such as cognitive impairment, severe dry mouth, constipation, retention, urinary and blurred vision. In addition, the benefits extend far beyond control, allergic, offering cardiovascular protection, digestive support, strengthening, general immunological and increased vitality, a holistic consideration especially important for the treatment of geriatric patients, as Dr. Ricardo Andrade observes, pioneer in nutritional immunogeriatrics. What we find about nutrition and allergies in the elderly population in the last decade is fundamentally rewriting our understanding of the plasticity of the system, aged immunological. Contrary to old dogmas, we see that even systems, immunological with decades of established allergic memory can be reprogrammed for tolerance through the right nutritional interventions applied consistently. For many patients, this represents a true liberation. After years of debilitating symptoms and drug effects drugs, for those who face the challenge of allergies in the elderly, remember, the journey to a more balanced immune system does not require dietary perfection, immediate, but consistency and gradual progression. Start by incorporating one or two of these overfeeds in their routine and build from there, observing how their body responds and working in collaboration with your medical team to monitor the results and potentially adjust your medication as appropriate. And perhaps the most important thing, it's never too late to start. Error. Be you newly diagnosed with late-onset allergies or dealing with sensitivities from youth, its immune system still has a remarkable capacity to respond positively to adequate therapeutic nutrition. Each allergic reaction avoided, each day lived without debilitating symptoms, and each reduction in the need for medication, it represents a significant victory for your health and quality of life. The final message is of empowerment and hope. Its immune system, even after decades of allergic conditioning, can learn new standards of response. Through these 5 surpluses, you offer not only nutrients, but a true natural medicine that can guide your immune system back to balance, allowing you to fully enjoy life without the constant burden of allergic symptoms and sedative medications. Which of these anti-allergic overlooking you plan to incorporate first in your routine? Share your experience or questions in the comments below. Your journey can inspire others to take their first steps toward the release of allergies after 60.